Good morning, readers. Today we are going to talk about technical vocabulary. Go ahead and get out your reading, learning, intention sheet. Fill in the date and the book you think you'll be reading. Today as a reader, I'm working on using technical vocabulary. Readers, technical vocabulary is a vocabulary that is specific to a certain subject. And it's important to use because it helps you and the people that you're talking to understand what you're talking about or writing about when you're writing about your reading. Readers, you will know when a word is technical vocabulary because the author repeats the word. Readers, you may also be able to identify technical vocabulary because it's defined within the text. We're going to take a look at this passage and see if we can find any technical vocabulary. What was Ellis Island? Ellis Island was an immigration center located in New York Harbor. Millions of newcomers passed through its gates and were examined by doctors and legal inspectors. Some were allowed to enter the United States right away, some were detained, held for a while, and some were deported, rejected, and sent back. Before Ellis Island opened, immigrants had been examined at Castle Garden at the tip of Manhattan Island. At one time, Castle Garden had been a fort and then a concert hall. In 1855, it was turned into an immigration center. 35 years later, it was no longer big enough to handle the thousands of new immigrants arriving daily. The U.S. government then decided to use a small piece of land in New York Harbor known as Ellis Island for a new immigration center. The Ellis Island station opened in 1892. During the next 30 years, more people came to America than any other time. At least 12 million of them passed through Ellis Island. Readers, as I look at this, I noticed that immigration center was repeated a few different times. It's right here and then right here. So I know that that's a part of technical vocabulary. Take a look at these two pages and see if you can identify any other words that we might define as technical vocabulary. Give me a thumb up if you see one. Readers, I noticed that detained was defined in the text, and so I think that that is a word that would be technical vocabulary. It means held for a while. And then deported is also defined in the text, and that means rejected and sent back. Finally, I see the word examined repeated a few times. Since these words are either repeated or defined, these are words that I'm going to want to use when I'm writing or taking a note, or when I'm talking to other people about what the book says. All right, readers, let's try it with another page. As I read this page, give me a thumb up when you can identify a word as technical vocabulary. This is where would you sleep and eat on the ship. If you traveled first or second class, you would have a private cabin to sleep in, and the food would be served in a dining room, but most immigrants traveled in the least expensive way, in steerage. The steerage area was below deck on the lowest level of the ship. Several hundred passengers were crammed into steerage with no fresh air. They slept in narrow bunk beds, sometimes 3 high. When one 7-year-old came from Barbados in January, she and the other passengers were so cold on board that many were frostbitten. Usually there was one bath area for all steerage passengers, with sink faucets that frequently didn't work. Immigrants often talked about the filth in the steerage area. The food for steerage passengers wasn't much better than their sleeping areas. Lukewarm soup, boiled potatoes, and stringy beef were often the only items on the menu. Many immigrants reported that all they ate was herring, bread, potatoes, and tea. The good thing about so much herring, some said, was that it helped prevent seasickness. One reporter who wanted to see what it was like to travel in steerage boarded a ship in Naples in 1906. When he arrived in America, he wrote, "How can a steerage passenger remember that he is a human being when he must first pick the worms from his food and eat his stuffy, stinking bunk, or in the hot atmosphere of a compartment where 150 men sleep?" All right, readers, turn and talk with your partner about a technical vocabulary word that you may have noticed on these 2 pages. Readers, I'm hoping you noticed that over and over and over the word steerage was repeated. Many different times they talked about steerage in this passage. So we know that this word would be an important one to write down when we're taking a note on this passage, but to also use when we're talking about how immigrants traveled or arrived in the United States. Readers, today you are going to notice and use technical vocabulary when you are taking notes. And finally, you're going to take notes. Let's make it a great reading day.